The night was cold, darker than usual, and the wind was sharp like a knife. A small village lay silent under the weak moonlight. Most people were inside their warm homes, but one girl stood outside in the cold, holding a thin blanket around her shoulders. Her name was Aisha. Aisha looked tired. Her hands were shaking, her lips were pale, and her eyes were full of worry. Beside her was her little brother Rafi, who was only 10 years old. He hugged himself and breathed out white clouds into the air. Their house stood behind them, a broken old wooden house that looked like it would fall at any moment. The roof had big cracks, and cold air entered through every hole. Aisha looked at the house, then at her brother. She took a deep breath and tried to smile. But her smile was weak. She whispered softly, "We will sleep in the cold tonight." Rafi looked down. His eyes filled with fear, but he did not cry. He knew his sister had no choice. Their father had died months ago, and since then, everything had only become harder. Food was less, money was gone, and their house was almost broken. Still, Aisha tried to stay strong. She had to, because she was all Rafi had now. The wind became stronger. The trees moved like dark shadows. The night felt heavy. Aisha's heart beat fast with fear, but she stayed quiet. She did not want her brother to see how scared she was. Suddenly, Rafi asked in a low voice, "Will we be okay, Aisha?" She touched his shoulder gently. "Yes, we will be okay," she said, even though she was not sure. The village path behind them was empty and dark. No one walked on it at this hour. But then, something changed. A faint sound came from the road footsteps. Slow, steady. Getting closer, Aisha's body froze. Rafi grabbed her hand tightly. The footsteps continued. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The sound grew louder. Aisha looked around, trying to see who was coming, but the darkness was too deep. The wind carried dust and dry leaves. Her heartbeat grew faster. She stepped in front of Rafi to protect him. Then the footsteps stopped. The air felt strange quiet, heavy, almost dangerous. Aisha waited, afraid to even breathe. A deep voice came from the darkness, soft but strong. "Not while I'm here." Aisha's eyes widened. Her breath stopped for a moment. She turned slowly toward the voice. A tall figure stood a few steps away. The moonlight fell on him just enough to show his face. He had a calm expression, but strong eyes. Aisha did not know him, or at least, she thought she didn't. The man stepped closer, but not too close. He looked at Rafi first, then at Aisha. His voice was steady. "You will not sleep in the cold tonight," he said. Aisha felt confused. Who are you?" she asked. The man did not answer immediately. He only looked at the broken house behind them. His eyes softened, like the house meant something to him. "Something painful," Rafi whispered. "Do you know us?" The man looked at the boy and nodded slightly, but his expression remained unreadable. Aisha felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Why was this man here? Why was he watching them? And how long had he been standing in the shadows? The wind blew again, pushing Aisha's hair across her face. She held her brother close. The man finally spoke again, his voice low but gentle. "Your father would never want this for you." Aisha felt like her heart stopped for a second. "Father," she whispered. The man nodded slowly. "I knew him," he said, "and I made him a promise." Aisha and Rafi looked at each other, shocked. The man stepped forward, his coat blowing behind him as the wind howled again. "And tonight," he said softly, "I am here to keep that promise." The part ends, here leaving the audience wondering, who is this man? What promise did he make? And why did he appear on this cold, dangerous night? The cold air wrapped around them like a warning. Aisha held Rafi's hand tightly as the mysterious man stepped closer. The moonlight touched his face again, showing a calm expression, yet a depth of sadness in his eyes. Aisha felt a strange fear, but also something else, something she could not explain. "Who are you?" she asked again, her voice stronger this time. The man took a slow breath before answering. "My name is Hamid." The name felt new to Aisha, but something in the way he spoke made her heart beat faster. He did not sound dangerous. He sounded familiar, like someone who had known their world long before they lost everything. Hamid looked at the broken house behind them. He walked toward it slowly and touched the uneven wooden door with his hand. His fingers pressed against the cold surface. For a moment, he closed his eyes, as if he was remembering something painful. Rafi whispered, "Do you really know our father?" Hamid turned toward the boy and nodded. "Yes," he said softly. "I knew him well." "Better than most?" Aisha stepped forward. "Then why did you come now?" she asked. "Where were you when he was sick? When we needed help? Why appear on a night like this?" Her words were sharp. Her voice was hurt. She had carried too much pain for too long. Hamid did not get angry. He simply listened. His eyes softened with guilt. "I was far away," he said. "Too far. And by the time I heard what happened, it was already too late." Aisha looked away, her throat tight. Hamid continued, "But your father made me promise one thing. He said, no matter what happens, don't let my children fall alone." Ayas's lips trembled. Rafi squeezed her arm, but she stayed guarded. A promise meant nothing unless someone kept it. Hamid reached into a bag he carried and took out a thick wool blanket. He placed it gently around Rafi's shoulders. Then he handed another to Aisha. She didn't take it. "Why are you helping us?" she asked again. Hamid did not force her. He simply laid the blanket over the old wooden railing and said, "Because I should have come earlier. Because your father trusted me. Because you should not freeze in the cold." For a moment, silence stood between them like a wall. Aisha's eyes filled with tears she didn't want to show. She quickly wiped them before Rafi could see. Hamid walked around the house, checking the broken walls, the cracked roof, the open gaps where wind sneaked in. Every time he touched the wood, his face fell a little more. "This house will not survive the night," he said finally. Aisha felt a sting in her chest. This was their home even if it was broken. The last thing their father left them. "We have nowhere else to go," she said quietly. Hamid looked at her, then at Rafi. He saw the fear they were trying to hide. He walked closer, but kept a careful distance so he would not scare them. "Come with me," he said. "Just for tonight?" Aisha stepped back instantly. "No, we don't know you. You say you knew our father, but anyone can say that." Hamid nodded, understanding her concern. "You are right. You don't know me, and I don't expect trust in 1 minute." He slowly reached into his coat pocket and took out a small, old wooden keychain. Aisha froze. She knew that keychain. It had belonged to her father. He carried it everywhere. Hamid placed it gently in her hand. "I kept this safe," he said. "He gave it to me the last time I saw him." Aisha stared at the keychain, her fingers trembling. It was real. It was hers. Her father had touched it last, and now she held it again. Rafi whispered, "Aisha." "He's telling the truth." Hamid stepped back. "I will not force you," he said. "But I am staying near this house tonight. If the cold becomes too strong, call me. Even from far away, I will hear." Aisha looked at her brother, then at the dark sky, the broken house, and finally at Hamid. Something inside her shifted. Not yet, but something close. The cold night was still dangerous. But now they were not alone. The night grew colder, and the wind howled around the broken house like a hungry beast. Inside, Aisha tried to start a small fire with the few dry sticks they had left. Her hands were stiff, and her breath came out in white clouds. Rafi sat beside her, wrapped in the thick blanket Hamid had given him. The room was dark, lit only by the faint orange glow of the weak fire. Outside, Hamid stood under a tree, watching the house quietly. He had promised not to force them, and he stayed true to his word, but he did not leave. He remained there in the freezing cold, as if protecting them from an unseen danger. Aisha kept glancing toward the window. Part of her wanted to trust him, but another part held back. People changed after her father's death. Friends became strangers. Helpers disappeared. The world had taught her that promises were just words. "Do you think he will stay all night?" Rafi asked in a soft voice. Aisha looked at the window again. Hamid's shadow stood still. I don't know, she replied quietly. Maybe he will. Rafi hugged the blanket closer. He looks kind. Aisha didn't answer. Her mind fought between fear and hope. The fire slowly faded, making the room colder. A sudden loud creak came from the roof. Aisha jumped. Rafi grabbed her hand tightly. It's just the wind, Aisha whispered. But even she didn't believe her own words. The roof had been weak for months. A big storm could make it fall any moment. Every night since their father passed, Aisha slept with one ear open, afraid the roof would collapse while they slept. Outside, Hamid heard the sound too. He walked closer to the house and called gently, Are you both all right? Aisha didn't open the door. She only answered through the wooden wall, We're fine. Hamid didn't push. I'm staying here, he said simply. If anything happens, call me. His voice held no fear. No doubt, just a quiet promise. Aisha returned to her brother. But her mind stayed restless. Minutes turned into hours. The fire died completely. The cold invaded every corner of the room. Aisha rubbed Rafi's hands to keep him warm. He looked at her with sleepy eyes. Aisha, we can't stay like this forever. She knew he was right. But she didn't want to rely on a stranger. Another loud crack echoed from the roof. Dust fell from above. Aisha's eyes widened. Rafi stood up fast. Aisha, the roof before he could finish. A wooden beam shifted dangerously. Aisha's heart pounded. She grabbed her brother. We need to get outside now. They ran toward the door, but the cold hit them like a wall. Aisha looked around desperately. Hamid was already rushing toward them. What happened? He asked, breathless. The roof is falling. Rafi cried. Hamid didn't hesitate. Stay here. He ran inside the house without waiting for permission. Aisha wanted to stop him, but it was too late. He had disappeared into the darkness of the house. Why is he helping us so much? Rafi whispered. Aisha shook her head. I don't know. Inside, Hamid checked the roof with a lantern he carried. The beams were loose. One more push from the wind, and the roof would collapse completely. He returned outside, breathing hard. You can't stay here. Not tonight. Aisha stepped back. But Hamid lifted his hand gently. I won't take you far. My cabin is close. Just a few minutes from here. It's warm, safe, and small. You and Rafi will be protected there. Aisha hesitated. She looked at her brother, shivering in the cold. She looked at the broken house, the only thing left from her father. Then she looked at Hamid, who stood trembling from the cold, but still waited for her answer with patience. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't forcing. He was simply waiting. Rafi tugged her sleeve. Aisha. Please. Something inside her finally softened. Aisha nodded slowly. We will come. Just for tonight. Hamid exhaled softly, relief in his eyes. Thank you. Let's go before the roof falls. And with that decision, their life began to change. The wind grew louder as Aisha, Rafi, and Hamid walked toward his cabin. The path was narrow, covered with dry leaves that cracked under their feet. Aisha held Rafi's hand tightly, while Hamid walked a few steps ahead, holding a small lantern to light the way. The yellow glow stretched across the dark field, making their shadows long and thin. Aisha kept looking around. She felt nervous. The night was too quiet, except for the wind. And the trees looked like tall, dark guards standing around them. Rafi leaned close to her. Is his cabin really close? He whispered, yes. Hamid replied without turning. Just a little ahead. A minute later, they saw a small wooden cabin between two old trees. It looked simple but strong. Aisha felt her heart calm a little. Smoke rose from the chimney, a sign of warmth inside. Hamid opened the door and stepped aside. Please, go in. Aisha hesitated only a second before entering. The cabin was warm, much warmer than their house. A fire burned inside a stone fireplace, and a soft light filled the room. A single bed, a small table, and 2 wooden chairs stood neatly around the space. Everything looked clean and cared for. Rafi ran to the fire and held his hands out. "It's so warm," he said with relief. Aisha felt her frozen fingers come alive again. She glanced at Hamid as he closed the door behind them. Something about the way he moved, slow, thoughtful, told her he wasn't here to harm them. Still, she stayed careful. "You can sit," Hamid said gently. Aisha sat near the fire with Rafi, while Hamid removed his coat and hung it on a hook. "You live here alone?" Aisha asked. Hamid nodded. "Yes, for many years." "Why?" she asked before she could stop herself. Hamid smiled softly, but his eyes held shadows. "Sometimes life takes you to places you never planned." He sat down slowly on a wooden chair and looked at the fire. For a long moment, he didn't speak. The room felt heavy with unasked questions. Finally, Aisha gathered courage. "You said you knew our father." Hamid lifted his eyes. "I did. How?" she asked to Hamid, took a slow breath, as if opening a door from the past. "I was younger then, lost, angry, and alone. I made mistakes. Many mistakes. Your father Luqman, he found me on a winter night just like this one. I had nothing. No food, no shelter, no hope." Aisha stared at him. She had never heard this story. Hamid continued. "Your father saw something good in me when no one else did. He gave me food. He gave me work. He gave me a place to sleep. He treated me like a brother." His voice shook slightly. "He didn't care about my past. He believed I could become better." Aisha felt her chest tighten. Rafi whispered, "Papa helped everyone." Hamid nodded. "Yes, he saved many people. But one day, there was an accident in the forest. A tree fell during a storm. I was trapped under it. Your father came running to help me, even when others were afraid." Hamid paused, his eyes moist. "He saved me, but he hurt himself in the process." Aisha's breath caught. "Hurt himself? What do you mean?" Hamid's eyes lowered. "He didn't tell you, but his injury became worse with time. He hid the pain from you both. He didn't want you to worry." Aisha felt tears burning in her eyes. Hamid continued softly. "When he realized he may not survive, he called me close. He gave me his keychain, the same one I gave you last night. And he said, 'Promise me you will protect my children. Promise me they will never be alone.'" Aisha covered her mouth as tears fell. "I promised," Hamid said, "but I failed to come sooner. I failed him." Aisha shook her head slowly. "You came now. When we needed you the most?" Hamid looked at her with pain and relief mixed in his eyes. "No," he whispered. "Tonight, I came to finish the promise. And I will not leave you again." For the first time, Aisha believed him. Morning arrived slowly, touching the sky with pale orange light. Aisha opened her eyes inside Hamid's cabin and felt something she had not felt for months' warmth. For a moment, she simply watched the dancing light of the fireplace. The wind outside was still strong, but in the cabin, everything felt safe. Rafi was still sleeping, his face peaceful for the first time in weeks. Aisha smiled softly. She covered him with the blanket and stood up quietly. Hamid was outside the cabin, chopping wood. His breath created small white clouds in the cold air. His movements were steady and strong. Each strike of the axe showing a life of hard work and silence. Aisha walked outside, pulling her shawl close. Hamid noticed her and paused. "You should rest more," he said gently. Aisha shook her head. "I rested enough. I wanted to help." Hamid smiled faintly. "There is not much for you to do. You've already carried too much." Aisha looked down. No one had ever said that to her, not since her father's death. Everyone expected her to be strong. No one saw her pain. For a while, they stood there quietly. The air smelled of fresh wood in winter. "Hamid," Aisha said suddenly, "what will happen to our house now?" Hamid set the axe down. "We will check it. But the roof looked very weak last night." Aisha felt fear return. Losing the house meant losing the last part of her father. Hamid noticed her worry. "Don't think the worst before we see it," he said. "Come, after Rafi wakes up, we will go together." Later that morning, the three of them walked back to the house. The path felt different in daylight, still cold, still empty, but less frightening. When they reached their home, Aisha's breath caught. The roof had collapsed on one side. Wooden pieces lay everywhere. Dust covered the doorway. The house looked smaller, weaker, almost like it was crying. Rafi grabbed Aisha's hand. "It broke," he whispered. Aisha felt tears rise, but she held them back. "It's okay," she said softly, even though her heart was breaking. Hamid stepped inside carefully, checking the damage. After a few minutes, he came out, his face serious. "You cannot live here anymore," he said quietly. "It's too dangerous." Aisha looked at the broken walls. She felt her father's presence in every corner of that home. His voice, his laugh, his warm hands, all carried by the memory of these walls. "But this is all we have," she whispered. Hamid looked at her gently. "Not anymore." Aisha looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Hamid took a slow breath. "I cannot replace your father. I cannot give you what you lost. But I can give you safety. I can give you a home. Until you are ready to build your own." Aisha blinked. "You want us to stay with you?" "For as long as you need," Hamid said calmly. "I made a promise. But more than that, I want to help." Aisha felt her heart tremble. She was not used to kindness. She was not used to someone choosing to stay. Rafi suddenly spoke. "Can we really stay?" "For a while?" Hamid placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Yes. I will take care of both of you." Aisha looked at Hamid, really looked. His eyes held no lies, no hidden motive, only a quiet strength she had never seen in anyone else. Slowly she nodded. "Then we will stay. But only until we can stand on our own feet," Hamid smiled. "That is all I want." Together, they returned to the cabin. Hamid made warm soup for them. Aisha cleaned the small table. Rafi played near the fire. For the first time, the cabin felt like a beginning, not a shelter. That night, Aisha watched the fire burn softly. She whispered to herself, maybe life can start again. And just like that, the promise made years ago began to rebuild their world. Winter passed slowly. But inside Hamid's small cabin, time moved in a softer way. Days grew brighter. The cold became less sharp. And for Aisha and Rafi, life found a new rhythm, one built on safety, quiet hope, and warm meals shared beside a glowing fire. Every morning Hamid woke early and chopped wood. Aisha cleaned, cooked, and washed clothes. Rafi helped with small tasks and spent time reading the old books Hamid kept on a shelf. Little by little, the cabin changed, not in shape, but in feeling. What once belonged only to Hamid now felt like a place where three lives slowly blended. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky orange and gold, Aisha watched Hamid fix a broken chair outside. His hands were steady, careful, as if every piece of wood mattered. She stepped closer. "You don't have to fix everything alone." Hamid glanced up, smiling softly. "I don't mind. It keeps me busy." "But you do so much already," Aisha said. Hamid looked at her with thoughtful eyes. "I'm not doing it out of duty anymore." Aisha felt her heart stir. There was something new in his voice, something gentle, something unspoken. Before she could respond, Rafi ran outside waving a small paper. "Aisha, look, I drew us," he said excitedly. He held up the picture. A small cabin, a bright fire, and three figures standing together. Rafi had drawn Aisha on one side, himself in the middle, and Hamid on the other. Aisha's eyes softened. "It's beautiful." Hamid looked at the drawing quietly. Something in his expression changed, something warm, almost fatherly. That night, when Rafi fell asleep early, Aisha sat near the fire alone. She touched the edge of the chair Hamid had fixed and whispered, "Thank you for giving us a place." Hamid sat across from her. "You don't need to thank me." She looked up. but I want to. You saved us. Hamid shook his head gently. No, Aisha. You saved yourself long before I arrived. I only walked the last part of the path with you. Aisha didn't reply. Her throat felt tight with emotion. Spring arrives. As the snow melted, Hamid began gathering supplies. Wood, nails, tools. He made trips to the village and returned with bags full of building materials. Aisha noticed. What are you planning? She asked. Hamid paused. Your house? Our house? She repeated. Yes, Hamid said. We will rebuild it. Not because you need to leave the cabin, but because you deserve a place of your own. Aisha stared at him, speechless. Rafi jumped with excitement. We will have a house again. Hamid nodded. A safe one. A strong one. For many weeks they worked together. Hamid taught Rafi how to hammer nails. He showed Aisha how to measure wood, how to place stones, how to build walls that could stand against storms. They worked side by side, laughing sometimes, arguing sometimes, but always moving forward, day after day. The house rose again this time, taller, warmer, stronger. The village people watched in surprise. Some even joined in, helping with paint and roof tiles. The place that once looked abandoned now looked like a new beginning. The night of completion. When the house was finally finished, Aisha stood at the doorway, her hand on the smooth wooden frame. She felt tears rise, but this time they were tears of pride, not pain. Rafi shouted happily, running around the house. Aisha, Hamid. It's perfect. Hamid stepped beside her. Your father would be proud. Aisha looked at him quietly. And he would thank you. Hamid lowered his gaze. I only kept a promise. Aisha shook her head gently. No, Hamid, you gave us more than a promise. You gave us a life again. There was silence. Soft, warm, peaceful. Then Aisha whispered the words that had lived in her heart. Since the night they almost froze, we almost slept in the cold that night. Rafi finished the sentence from behind them with a wide smile, but he didn't let us. Hamid closed his eyes for a moment, holding the weight of those words. When he opened them, there was calmness in his gaze, calmness that comes only after fulfilling something sacred. Together, the three of them stepped into their new home, one built not just with wood and stone, but with loyalty, kindness, and a promise kept across years. And so, their story didn't end with cold. It ended with warmth, the kind made not by fire, but by hearts that chose to stay.